This morning's Old Testament reading is 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1 to 15. The following spring, at the time of the year when kings usually go to war, David sent out Joab with his officers and the Israelite army. They defeated the Ammonites and besieged the city of Rabbah, but David himself stayed in Jerusalem. One day, late in the afternoon, David got up from his nap and went to the palace roof. As he walked around up there, he saw a woman taking a bath in her house. She was very beautiful. So he sent a messenger to find out who she was and learned that she was Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. David sent messengers to get her. They brought her to him, and he made love to her. She had just finished her monthly ritual of purification. Then she went back home. Afterward, she discovered that she was pregnant and sent a message to David to tell him. David then sent a message to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah arrived, David asked him if Joab and the troops were well and how the fighting was going. Then he said to Uriah, "Go on home and rest a while." Uriah left, and David had a present sent to his home, but Uriah did not go home. Instead, he slept at the palace gate with the king's guards. When David heard that Uriah had not gone home, he asked him, "You have just returned after a long absence. Why didn't you go home?" Uriah answered, "The men of Israel and Judah are away in battle, and the covenant box is with them. My commander Joab and his officers are camping out in the open. How could I go home, eat and drink, and sleep with my wife? By all that is sacred, I swear that I could never do such a thing." So David said, "Then stay here the rest of the day, and tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next. David invited him to supper and got him drunk. But again that night Uriah did not go home. Instead he slept on his blanket in the palace guard room. The next morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by Uriah. He wrote, "Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is heaviest. Then retreat and let him be killed." Thus ends this morning's Old Testament reading.
So, this is the last of our series on King David, although there could be more, but we're going to start those object lessons next week. But our story begins, as you heard, when the troops are going off to war. Now, normally, David would be joining them. However, this time, David sent everyone else out to war, and he stayed in the comfort of his own home in Jerusalem. Something doesn't seem right even in the beginning of this story. Up until this point, David's life was a role model. He was anointed, brave, strong, compassionate, leading by example. But now, he stays home and sends everyone else out to war. We're not told why. But isn't it possible that the crown could have inflated his ego a little bit? He certainly didn't seem to be the humble shepherd boy any longer, nor was he acting like the one anointed by God. Leaders lead by leading, by doing, by working with people, not by sitting back and letting everyone else do the work. Now, maybe David had his reasons for not going this time. Maybe he didn't feel well. Maybe his back went out. Maybe he needed a break. Some scholars believe David was going through a type of depression or a type of midlife crisis at this time. The truth is, we really don't know. But all we do know is that he did not go. Instead of being where he was supposed to be, he stayed home. And that brings me to one of the main points, actually, of this whole message. Doesn't it seem that we are most tempted in our life when we are not where we are supposed to be? Think about it. Think back to your younger years. Isn't that when we lose our way? We've all experienced this in one way or another. Not being where we're supposed to be. What places are temptations in your life, or have been temptations in your life? Being with certain people that have less than a positive influence on you? Staying out late when you're supposed to be home? Sitting in front of the computer, maybe viewing things you shouldn't be viewing? Or being on your phone or computer when you really need to be with your family? Sleeping in on a Sunday when you are actually spiritually depleted? Where is the most dangerous place for you? For David, ironically, it was being in Jerusalem when he should have been on the battlefield. David loses his way. And so we continue with the story. We're told that one evening, David got up out of bed, walked around on the roof of the palace, and saw a beautiful woman bathing. Now, I don't know about you, but I know when I was younger and you saw movies or heard stories about this, it always seemed like Bathsheba was luring King David. Did any of you ever experience that or have that in your minds years ago? You know, like she's bathing on a roof, kind of batting her eyes at David, right? But in those days, it was normal for a bath to be on rooftops for the sun to warm the water during the day. And usually there was a wall for privacy around it. This whole scene shows us that life offers us abundant opportunity for sin when we are not where we are supposed to be. David did not go to war. Bathsheba's husband is at war. Now David asks about her, and he's told that she is Uriah's wife. Despite this information, he sends messengers to get her. Now Bathsheba really would have had no choice. When the king sends for you, you go. Right? Back in those days, I mean, that's just the way it was. David slept with her. She went home. Now there's complications. She finds out she's pregnant. She sends word to David and wants him to handle it somehow. And he does try. He gets an A for effort. First, he tries manipulation plan A, right? He sends for Uriah, he makes some small talk with him, and then he sends him home to his lovely wife, hoping that when he sleeps with Bathsheba, now there will be no question of the pregnancy. That's why he sent him home. But Uriah doesn't go home. Instead, he sleeps on the floor of the king's house with all the other servants. So the next night, David tries manipulation plan B. He gets him drunk and then sends him home, hoping he sleeps with his wife. Again, Uriah sleeps with the servants where they're sleeping. You see, he had this reverence for the ritual which forbade sexual relations to warriors who had been consecrated for battle. That's why. Now David goes to total destruction plan C. He sends them to the front lines knowing Uriah would be killed. David's sin escalated, but it all started from him not being where he was supposed to be. David is a perfect example of how something as simple as a glance, a small thought, can escalate to full black-hearted sin. I'm pretty sure that when David first decided he wasn't going to go to battle, adultery was not on his mind. And when he took that stroll and he first saw Bathsheba, it still wasn't on his mind because he didn't even know if she was married or not at that point. But then, when he was told she was married, It was then that he probably talked himself right into things like, it's okay, I'm the king after all. Or, it's love at first sight. It's meant to be. Or any other number of justifications for his sinful behavior. And so it is with us also. When we are not where we're supposed to be, we can begin a slippery slope of deception. First deceiving ourselves, and then others, and then, oh, what tangled webs we weave. It can start out very small and easily escalate out of control. The sad thing is, David probably figured he had to do this to save face as king. He most likely justified his actions. After all, he did try to send Uriah home, not just once, but twice, so that life could go on uninterrupted. He might have even told himself it's Uriah's fault because he didn't go home. He was probably saddened by his decision, but convinced himself that there was no other way. As human beings, we can twist and turn things over in our minds to be whatever we want them to be if we do not invite God to be part of the decision. Now, when David married Bathsheba, now I'm going to go beyond the text you heard read today. When he married Bathsheba, he probably thought, okay, it's done now. Everything's going to be all right. But then the Lord sent Nathan to David. Did the Lord ever send a person in your life that was brutally honest with you when you were going down the wrong path? Telling you things you did not want to hear? Those are the best friends to have. When they met, Nathan told David a story, a parable if you will. And it went like this. Nathan said, David, there were two men in town. One was very rich and one was very poor. The rich man had many sheep and cattle, but the poor man only had one little lamb. He raised it from a baby. He loved it. It was really part of their family. But now the rich man had a guest come to his house, but instead of taking one of his own sheep or cattle to make the meal, he took that poor man's little beloved lamb. When David heard this story, we are told that he burned with anger and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, this man deserves to die. He must pay 4 times that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity at all. Then I can just picture Nathan looking David squarely in the eye, saying, you are this man, David. You are this man. God gave you everything. A huge house, wives, ruler of Judah and Israel. You had everything, and yet you took this poor man Uriah's wife, the only wife he had, and you killed him so you could marry her. You are this man, David. I could just picture the words echoing in David's soul until he finally realized, I have sinned against the Lord. And that's the first step back into the arms of God. We hate seeing respected people fall, don't we? We can start with our own parents. We put them on a pedestal and then something happens and they come off the pedestal, and we hate to see people make a mistake, make sin. We hate to see people fall short of the glory of God, but the truth is we all do. We see renowned athletes, movie stars, political leaders fall. We see community teachers, doctors, counselors, pastors, neighbors, friends, and family fall. We hate to see this. Whether it's people we know or people we admire from afar, they do something that we know they know is wrong. St. Augustine once said that David's fall should put all of us who have not yet fallen on guard and save from despair all of those who have fallen. Why do people, even kings, seemingly people who have everything, do something so contrary to the way the rest of their life is, like with King David? Could it be as simple as thinking happiness lies in the next thing? Happiness lies in the next relationship, or the next job, or the next purchase, or the next, you fill in the blank? In our society where money, romance, and perfect bodies and perfect health are very overrated, it's no wonder we struggle to be quote-unquote happy. But we go about it all backwards. Happiness is a byproduct of following the path God puts before us. If we make happiness our goal, we can never achieve it. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "You can't get second things by putting them first." Which leads me to this little story that I love by Arthur Simon in his book, How Much Is Enough? In this book, there are two dogs. We have dog lovers here? Any dog lovers? Okay. All right. So this little dog spends all of his time chasing his tail. And he's just chasing his tail. And the other dog is like, "What are you doing?" "I have done much study," said this dog, "and I have found that happiness lies in my tail." And he keeps chasing his tail. The other dog says, "I have done much studying also, and I have also found that happiness lies in my tail. But I've also found that I can never catch it. So, I have learned that if I go about my business of every day, my tail follows." Happiness follows whatever God is leading us in our daily life. Pursue happiness and it eludes us. Go about life's intended purpose and a measure of happiness follows. I love that little story. So, what happened to David after he realized he sinned against the Lord? Nathan tells him, "The Lord has taken away your sin, David." Tells him he's forgiven. But does David walk away trouble-free? He has plenty of troubles in his life. His baby dies. There's rape in his family among children. One son kills another. Then the one son tries to overthrow his father and he dies in battle. The men of Israel later desert David, leaving him just with the men of Judah. Saul tries to kill David. But in the end, David sings a song of praise to God that begins like this. "The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, and my Savior." I would say through everything David went through, all his personal loss, all of his professional loss, despite all of that, David held joy. He held peace. He no longer was going his own way, and he was now following God. I pray that we can learn from David, from his times of faithfulness and his times of wandering, from his goodness and from his sin. May we be reminded that we all fall short of the glory of God, and that God always forgives, and it's never too late to stop chasing our tail. Amen.